So, I could do a great long introduction about Sue and the fact that she was at the University of Liverpool to do lots of wonderful, fantastic architectural stuff. But probably most people are most aware of her, and particularly why we've got her here today, is that Sue is the best thing since sliced bread when it comes to social media and construction, and does a fantastic job of educating all the rest of us in how to use Twitter, LinkedIn, and anything else that we can think of that we haven't even heard of. So Sue comes highly recommended. It's going to be a fantastic host this afternoon. I'll keep bigging her up and now hand over to her. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Duncan. Oh, right, I should do that to Alan.
Yes.
Hello everyone, good to see you. Nice to be in Leeds. It's about 3 years since I was in Leeds, which is really bad, sorry. But my first job is to introduce to you our first keynote speaker, who is Dr. Anne Kemp. She's Director and Fellow at Atkins Global, but she used to be Chair of the Association for Geographic Information for 2 years. Now she's the Vice Chair of Building Smart UK. She's Chair of the ICE's BIM Action Group and of BIM Infrastructure UK as well. And also provides strategic advice to HS2 on BIM and to the Thames Water Alliance 820. She recently graduated as a prize winner for her MSc in Coaching and Behavioural Change, which she took at the Henley Business School. And she focused on sustained collaborative working, which is something that we all want to happen. So who better to introduce the topic of behavioural change? I'll give you Dr. Anne Kemp for your eye, and here's your clicker. Thank you.
The error will be about to come my way, I suspect. Hello everybody. I don't know how many of you have heard me talk before. So forgive me if this is a repeat of anything you've heard. But what I want to talk about today doesn't really just stick with construction and assembly, I have to say. I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable now, Duncan. You've set me up. But you know, it is about how can we sustain collaborative working across our industry, because it seems to be a bit of a recurring problem for us. Why is it so difficult for us? So what I'm really going to describe today are the highlights of findings from the research. I really want to carry it on in collaboration with others, with the university, and I'm actually feeling quite stuck at the moment because I'm not quite sure how to scope that, where to go, which university, etc., etc. So do let me know if you're interested and feel that actually, having listened to me, you could help or guide me on that. That'd be really grateful. You see, first mistake. Oh, you see, I was holding it upside down. There you go.
It's my fault.
Just a revision on where we are. And there's a couple of you who helped me during the research as well. So although you're anonymous, I am very grateful to the time that people have given me in supporting the research and helping me in the findings. But so as you usually do within an MSc, you start with a literature review, and it was very clear that it's a well-known problem. We kind of get that it's a problem. And one of the things, a really good text, if you are interested in, I would recommend, is by Will Koch, 2013, who talks about silo working. And I think the principles of it are quite good, because what it's really saying is that we are very comfortable in our silos. We are a tribal species. We are animals. We are a herd species. And silos give us safety. We feel we belong, a sense of belonging, language and so forth. And there'll be a quote I come up with a little bit later from John Eman to say, actually our industry is very fond of its silos of architecture and structural engineers and civil engineers, and you know, we set ourselves up to fail in a sense, because by being so well identified with those disciplines, we actually miss out the opportunity to train our students and our graduates how to collaborate and work across those disciplines. It's a really important piece of the jigsaw that I think is missing. But hey, what's BIM about? It is about collaborative working. So again, it should help us if we start again. John looks like he's about to attack me or ask a question.
No, I'm listening
Am I
now.
all right? Oh, okay. Right. So, and one of the things, there's been a lot of work going on around contracts, which I think is good. It's a set up, but it's only a part of the problem. And I think one of the things I kept on stumbling over is that people do have an opinion, a very strong opinion about how to tackle collaborative working. But I kept on feeling as though we were only looking at a piece of the problem. So really what I wanted to do was to take a more systemic approach. So look at it from an ecosystem point of view, look at it as a whole, and see whether we were missing something here, something obvious, so to take a step right back. But I also have to declare my bias as well. My own bias is that I feel that the people side is missing. We go for contract, we go for the commercial side of things, we go for the technology and processes. We are doing with BIM, and I've worked with John, for instance, and with Karen on the BIM task group. And we do a lot of that stuff, but do we really understand the people dimension, the fluidity of relationships and the importance of relationships? Are the relationships big enough to get the job done? So one of the times I gave this talk and feeling a little bit timid because starting a BIM conference at the Institution of Civil Engineers, I'm talking about people. It's kind of with civil engineers. It's like it feels very awkward, and I'm female as well, so I'm probably going to be really stereotyped here. So I was talking about it as being soft stuff, and actually one of the people said, "Annie, this is not the soft stuff. This is the really hard stuff." And you know, this namby-pamby stuff, you know, that we like to, you know, so we do kind of laugh about it and so forth. But actually that whole laughter and hilarity is showing that we're going into a defence mechanism. It's that we feel threatened. It is kind of our identity here. You know, and who on earth brings themselves fully into the workplace? Do you really want to bring all of your emotional baggage into the workplace and be you? Good heavens, no, not just defining it. As a female, there's an article in the Daily Telegraph which had me incensed, I have to say. It was saying, if you want to succeed as a woman and march into the boardroom, you know, of course I want to be, I'm really important here. But apparently I'm failing because I'm not wearing a jacket with shoulder pads. I'm being too much myself, being too personal. But this isn't being about being female or anything else. It is about diversity, being willing to be much more present in the workplace, being ourselves and respecting each other. And when we start talking about language, very often people start getting a bit restive or sort of thinking, this isn't relevant to me. But boy, it really is. Of course we have to be able to handle our emotions. This is not about kicking off and getting out of control, but it is being about respectful about people's opinions, why they may feel that they have more buy-in to a particular part of the world that we live in. So think of it as a beach ball, and I'm sitting on this particular part of the beach ball, which is the BIM world, and I'm seeing it as a geographer, as I was a couple of weeks ago when I was at the Building Smart Summit. But the guy just two chairs from me is actually a civil engineer. He's an infrastructure person, and he feels neglected. And then two chairs down from me, there's somebody on the orange part of the beach ball who's actually from Building Smart, and he talks about industry foundation classes. This is the answer to everything here. And suddenly we're already trapped in our own language. So I'm coming from geographic markup language, which we'll talk about later on this afternoon. They're talking about industry foundation class, and their organisations are tied up to that. They've invested their organisational lives in developing this artefact of this organisation. It's a measure of their success, and by God, they are going to make it succeed. But have they actually understood the problem statement? So again, stepping back, looking at it systemically and thinking, if I actually talk to that guy on the red or the orange or the blue piece of the beach ball, maybe I'd actually understand what that beach ball actually looks as a whole. And that actually it works better as a ball if you've got all of the segments joined together. So what I tried to do with the framework was to say, well look, within this ecosystem, which is our construction industry, there are absolutely industries. There are absolutely individuals, all of you as individuals. And you have perspectives you're bringing in from your childhood, from your family lives, from your work, but even in work, you are probably members of a number of teams. You're probably a member of a sports team at home, etc. And your identity is actually related to that. Your identity is probably related to your job title. So my identity was firmly identified with being network chair for Atkins. It's a really important role and I felt I was making a difference. And when it was taken away from me, I had a bit of a crisis. Because it was like, oh, now what am I? And that is one of the problems we have, is we identify with our jobs rather than for us. So one of my ambitions would be, how do we make sure that our identity is me? And actually that's robust and it sees me right through my career and through my retirement. Because when I retire, I'm still me. I haven't lost my identity when I lose my job. So looking to the individual first, we've got a number of responsibilities that we should be taking on. We have a choice in the way that we behave. And too often people say, I'm really angry with you, you've made me really mad today. Because you told me you've got to get this thing out by 5 o'clock. And yet you've gone marching off and you haven't signed it off. So I'm getting really angry, I'm losing energy. But what I'm actually thinking about is, I have a choice. I either get angry and I push back and I do some stupid, irrational things, or I keep calm, I think rationally, I talk to the people around me, and I challenge. Because collaboration is not by being nice, by the way, and having a cozy relationship. It's actually about being brave. And as individuals, I think we need to challenge ourselves to be braver. So how do we actually do that? And I think that we have a problem because I don't know how many of you have had to go through a competency test when you've been applying for jobs within your organisation. So certainly Atkins, when they've been going on some of the frameworks, the highways agency and so forth, you get tested for how collaboratively you behave. How many of you have had that at all? It's quite scary actually, because you feel as though it's a tick list. So you know how collaborative, and it depends how they sort of parameters, how open you are and so forth. But does that really measure how you behave when you're on the job itself? Whether you have the energy, the motivation to behave like that. So one of the things that kept on coming up is leadership, is that what we're very good as individuals to say, well, it's not our problem. It's our team leader or it's our organisational lead doesn't motivate us to actually behave like that. Where we're told that actually we've got to make a profit and we can't share that information or so forth. It has to be brought back to the home base, to our team. We're going to make our team be successful. And leadership actually, if we wanted to be truly working within a collaborative environment, is to share. So within the team, any one person could lead at the appropriate time. Because if we've got a great team, actually it will be diverse and it will be able to adapt and change to different circumstances. And we've had this great hero leadership philosophy in our industry for far too long. Actually being able to operate as a team means that any one of you could be supported to take more of a leadership role if in fact your talents, your strengths are most appropriate. And if we can just make that switch to understanding the power of being able to make a team more adaptive in that sense, I think we could really make a difference in the industry. So there is a responsibility of teams. I need to keep screeching, Andy, I'm taking too long. But one of the training things we did at the MSc was we were immersed in group dynamics. And we didn't kind of realise we were guinea pigs until almost the end of the course, where we were put into groups of just 10, and then suddenly it was 50. Now that put me way out of my comfort zone, because I like to have a more intimate relationship, and I felt very, very exposed. But actually the way that you can manage teams and manage the dynamic to ensure that you've got that diversity of thinking, that each person feels they have the right and the ability and the support of the team to stand and speak up, to say how it is, to say, actually, I have a need here, I have a voice, I need to be listened to, is really important. And one of the things that kept on coming back to me as I started going into the research and doing interviews was, we're far too reluctant to speak out. We're very good at what we think, of having that big identity with teams, of being loyal to the team. And how many of you have been on team building exercises? That's kind of counterproductive, because actually we need the team to be relating to the bigger organisational objectives, not just the team. And the team should be able to challenge itself, and very often we're not good enough at doing that. So that difficult conversations is really, really important, and we're simply very good, particularly as English people. Forgive me if you're not English, in fact you can probably be amused and observe it. The English tend to be very nice to each other. Or they'll be very angry and they'll throw their toys and they'll throw telephones and so forth. I'm stereotyping, that's awful. But I think even bringing it into your awareness of what can go on and then thinking, oh, that's not right, is an important part of what we need to do. So that honesty of response is very, very important to us. But what we've got with BIM and with level 2 BIM is, okay, so you've got your competency frameworks, which are often used to test behaviours, but then we're not actually told, well, so what do we do about it? Well, the interesting thing with level 2, and this glorious PAS 1192 and BS 1192, it does give you a process that you should be following, and John and I and Karen look at this quite a lot. What's missing there is that there should be very strong relationships and team and cross-team relationships working in that. But do we ever talk about it when we're training people on it? Again, are the relationships big enough to get the work done? So you have a check review authorised process. Do you know those people? Are the relationships strong enough to know that they're not going to let you down and that they will challenge you appropriately? So, we're losing a few of the things here, but making people feel safe to work collaboratively, to challenge, to say you've let me down here, I don't think that you've done this right, I think you've taken a shortcut. It needs to be part of how we work, but in a way that we have relationships which stand that test. So this isn't either about being horrible, it is about feeling safe and knowing that the team overall and the organisation will stand by you if you challenge it. So learning and development, I think, is a huge part of it. 70% of our learning and development should be on the job. I'm not sure that we're actually explicit about that and actually support people in doing that. It's important that people feel it's safe to experiment, to test things out as they're going through their everyday lives. And again, I think this is something that we should be really working on when we're implementing BIM. So, I'm overplaying this a little bit, but how often do we just put that within the BIM execution plan? Direct cabarets, and I do rehearse and make people feel supported, so that actually, even if they made a mistake, actually they would be cocooned and we'd help people push on. And we'd work as part of with the audience as well. All of these relationships we can do as an industry as well. Mm-hmm. But why do we do some great stuff outside in our voluntary work and we don't do it when we come to work? Again, it's something I've noticed time and time again during my coaching. So, we have this tangle of different disciplines who are feeling very loyal to themselves, having their own language, so they can't talk to each other again. This is what BIM should be giving for us. This should be what Building Smart and Open Geospatial Consortium are facilitating, an open international common language, which allows us then to build trust through the data. We understand where the data's come from, that it's reliable, it's consistent, people are competent, and they've been open in the way that it's been developed. So, having one shared version of the truth. There's no one lonely limp BIM on the side, but neither is there a predator who's trying to control that. They're sharing. And there's a behaviour I would like to challenge as well. So misalignment, this is very much about, executives, but the middle management living the dream as well, making sure that we're really introducing the right energies into the system. Because we do find that actually that intrinsic motivation, this isn't just about being paid and being recognised, it is about how you make a link with what people truly believe and what their values are. So as an example, Crossrail has a great vision of what is its service, its digital service that it will want to deliver. And HS2 are doing a similar thing as our 820, linking with people, what the assets are, long-term, long life, and then that central data hub where everyone's able to understand and be able to start sharing decision-making in an intelligent way. So this first slide I thought I'd got rid of, forgive me, but these energies to actually ensure that we sustain collaborative working I think are really important. So it's both that cognitive, it's that common purpose side of things. It's also the behavioural side of things, so being open, those team dynamics. That emotional side, being self-aware but being mindful of everybody around you as well. So I was really lucky, I was in Hyderabad, met a Bhutanese delegation who were talking about the Growth Happiness Index. So, and part of that was actually what they do as a trade, what they do with their hands creatively and so forth, but it was also that self-awareness, that mindfulness as well, which I found really, truly enlightening. And then there's that situational side of things, the values, the processes, the dialogue that carries on. So really being able to share that, being able to talk as teams and across teams about that framework, I do think is going to help us open up more challenging conversations where we understand each other more. So I have a number of different recommendations here. One thing in particular I feel from a practical point of view is having a common sense monitor on the team and on the organisation who are watching to see whether we are actually not just behaving but we're really starting to live and understand what this means for us and why we should do it. So have we got that common purpose across the whole of the system, not just at the team, but across organisations? So across the whole of 820 and Thames Water, for Environment Agency, sharing its values across the whole of its framework. These are things that we really need to ensure it's not just about contracts. So, and finally, I just want to say, and a few of you will have heard it, but what I get really interested then is this merging of our virtual worlds, which BIM is around, digital data, serving it into people who hopefully are still remembering how to live in the real world, but less and less so perhaps. Because I think, are we ensuring that we're preserving the essence of who we are as human beings? How much of the relationships we're talking about are human to human, and how much are they actually human to technology? And how much is that disrupting the dynamic of what we're seeing evolving? We're getting totally overwhelmed by data, and there is a real problem here. What is the responsibility of our industry to ensure that just the right information is served, so there's a diverse thinking diversity of thinking being enabled across a range of people to come to a smart decision. And at the moment I'm afraid that we're losing our common sense, our gut and our heart over purely intellect. And Mind Change is a great book called by Susan Greenfield called Mind Change. Do have a look at it. There are some real serious consequences, but there's some really positive consequences about what the generations coming after us are able to do with the technologies to be able to preserve their relationships as humans as well. And I suspect Sue will be able to talk to us quite a lot about the social media side of things. But just a bit of a light-hearted thing. First instance of internet addiction disorder from Google Glasses was reported, I think, on the 14th of October last year, where a guy had been testing them, but then was using them for recreation as well for 18 hours a day, and he was taken into a clinic, and 2 days later he was still twitching, trying to move the screen on, so forth. So, I tend to do that with my iPad and my iPhone, and my 12-year-old daughter, when she was 8, said to me, "Mum, you're not here." And I was saying, "Of course I'm here." You're ridiculous. She said, "No, you're not here." you're talking to your iPhone. And she was right. Yeah, I was there with her on holiday. I wasn't focused on her, I was focused on the iPhone. My mind was elsewhere. So, you know, all of those sorts of things when we're talking about, is a relationship big enough to get the job done? Which relationship are we really looking after? So no overnight solution to collaborative working. Sorry guys, it's hard work, we've got to lean into it. But I do think that essence of being able to instill it will happen, providing we're determined, we're focused, and we're mindful and considerate of each other. So thanks very much. And I certainly think that being braver on the softer, campy stuff will help us. So,
Thank you, Anne.
thanks very much.